Hi guys, it's Jess. Welcome back to the Not Carrie Bradshaw YouTube channel. In this video, I'm reviewing season 2, episode 7 of the Gilded Age. Y'all, this episode had me in shambles. I was so excited to hop on the camera today so we can get into it because we have a lot to cover. A lot was revealed. Chat, our folks is going through it, so let's get right into it. Oh, that rhymed. The key event of this episode was the completion of the Brooklyn Bridge and the resulting celebrations. So it didn't occur to me, I think, just like as a modern person who lives in the modern world, it didn't occur to me what a game changer having this connecting bridge to quote unquote New York and Brooklyn, which we know one and the same, but okay. What a game changer it would be to connect these two different worlds. And I think that maybe that was a bit of a metaphor, and maybe Peggy is the connecting theme there as well. Like Peggy is the Brooklyn Bridge, like, of this group. I think in this season and in this episode, we really see her navigate both worlds. Like Peggy works in the white Upper East Side world, and she also works in the Black Brooklyn neighborhood. And I think it's really rich for her character development that we don't just see her as an accessory to the white people. She has a very full and meaningful life outside of working as an Agnes's secretary, and I really like that they delved deeper into that this season. So Mrs. Astor thought that she did her big one when she told Bertha, girl, I got you a box at the academy because I know that's what you always wanted. And by the way, I'm going to be helping Mrs. Roebling host the president for the reception after the Brooklyn Bridge. And it's like they really are like, kind of, it's this passive aggressive wasp speak that I tell y'all all the time that I cannot stand. It's like, oh yeah, my husband is on the board. Oh, well, I'm helping her plan the party. Oh, shut the hell up. So Mrs. Astor feels like by, saying, oh, I'll introduce you to the president. I'll give you this academy box that you always wanted, that she could placate Bertha. And that would be the end of the war. And Bertha was like, let me talk it off with my husband. And I'm glad that George was like, girl, she's just trying to shut you up. She feels like if she just gives you, a box at the academy, whereas at the Met, you would be the HBIC, that she can just, get you out of the way. I wouldn't do it. And you know what? Solid point. So Mrs. Astor really jumped the gun at Mrs. Fane's party when she was like, oh, Bertha's going to be taking a box at the academy. And it's like, Bertha ain't confirmed nothing with you. You had no business jumping out the face like that. Bertha did not say yay or nay. So she ended up embarrassing Mrs. Astor when she said, girl, no, I'm not. I'll still be at the Met. And Mrs. Astor was, honestly, this was like the equivalent of a boxing match for wealthy white women. And, all of a sudden Mrs. Astor is like, well, I can't say, girl, I gotta go. And it's like, I bet you do. You tried to pull a stunt, it didn't work. So in order to retaliate, when they get to the reception for the Brooklyn Bridge, of course, Mrs. Astor doesn't make this introduction. And who do we see but the Duke? The Duke is a whore. Okay, the Duke is a social whore. Now, I'm guessing that the Duke is a part of that British aristocracy during that era where they were land rich and title rich, but capital poor, and they would exchange their social capital for actual capital with wealthy Americans, wealthy white Americans, where it was like, if you have British aristocracy on your side, that means you're at the upper echelons of the society scene. And it was just this exchange. So the Duke is a whore. He done jumped ship. He was supposed to be there opening night for our girl Bertha. Now he's with Mrs. Astor. And it looks like, she paid a pretty penny to get him on her side. So Bertha is a little bit shook. George done pissed me off. I thought George was doing the right thing, and this is why you can't trust a white man. This is why you cannot give too much to it, especially a rich white man. You can't give them too much. They will let you down every time. George offered the laborers a modest 6-month raise, knowing full well that this would sow dissent between the tradesmen and the laborers, right? So once that contract is up, these folks are going to be fighting. What pissed me off is that he said, everyone will hate the Irish immigrants and the Jews. What do people still low-key have a problem with? Because again, a lot of whiteness, especially this kind of whiteness, is predicated on telling other white people that they're not the right kind of white. And I'm disappointed but not surprised because, of course, George would be this person. Um, as long as the powers that be and the people that have everything can convince the people below them to fight over crumbs amongst each other, they'll never look up to fight for what they actually deserve. And George knows this. Now, fortunately, Henderson, who is the union leader, is like, I see you for what you're doing. I'm on to you. And the only reason that I agreed to this is because you didn't let them folks shoot us, but I'm still on to you. Okay. You ain't really got one over on me like that. So we'll see how this turns out because George's business partners are pissed at him. They feel like they gave him too much. So now they feel like they got to turn on him. But George is like, your workers will eventually do the same. So we'll see how this turns out. We kind of know from historical context, but then again, you know, unions are still a controversial thing even today. Folks do not want to pay people to work. They want to pay us as little as possible to get the most work out of us, and that's still true today. Um, so the Van Rhynes are hosting a luncheon to celebrate this engagement that Marianne really just ain't that sold on. Even when she's talking to Peggy, she's picking out dresses. There should be a certain amount of excitement when you are engaged to the person that you actually want to marry. Marian does not have that kind of excitement. Everyone who she's talking to about the engagement, she seems to be trying to convince them and or herself that Dashiell is the right person. He checks all the boxes on paper, but it's just not quite curling over because we know the right person for our girl is Larry Russell, okay? Ugh. So Aunt Agnes really wants to start planning this wedding already, and Marion just looks like, do we have to? So Aunt Ada was already kind of telling Uncle Luke, like, you really don't have to go if you don't want to go. And he's like, no, I'm going to be there. Uncle Luke passes out. And Agnes is like, that's it. Y'all staying here. I'm calling my doctor to slide through to give us, like, a proper prognosis. Like, y'all might as well just go upstairs. We going to handle this. Okay. This devastated me because I was just like, damn, I was hoping we would get a couple more episodes with Aunt Ada and Uncle Luke, like being married and being blissfully, you know, together and all the things. And no, things do not look good for Uncle Luke. The cancer has progressed and he is basically on his deathbed. And I really loved that Agnes sat up with him and offered him such comforting words. She seemed to be genuinely, sincerely appreciative of the ways in which he added to Ada's life, albeit for a short time. I also thought that it was so selfless and sweet of Ada to tell him, you can go on, like you've given my life so much and I'm so grateful for you and thank you for loving me. He's like, girl, thank you for loving me back. And I think that there is something too, when a person has a terminal illness, sometimes they fight to hold on because they feel like they're abandoning the people that are here. And sometimes it is a kinder thing to give them permission to just stop fighting and cross over. And I thought that that was a really nuanced and sweet moment. But I'm so sad for Aunt Ada. Like, this crushed me. So we learned in this episode that at the luncheon, we learned that Oscar intended to propose to Maud Beaton, right? So he runs into George on the street and he's like, you know, I really don't want things to be awkward between us. And George is like, girl, I don't care. And he's like, about Gladys and her bangs. And it's like, well, sure, but also, you know, I've invested in a company that was kind of competing against you for the railroad. And George is like, what you talking about? I don't know nothing about that. And Oscar is like, well, you know, the company, blah, 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 blah. And George is like, baby, I know my business in and out. I know the key players. And if I don't know the name of the company, they're not a legit company. So I'm wondering, did Oscar just not do his due diligence as well? So the wheels start turning for Oscar. He runs over to the office. Baby, that office is cleaned at. So he runs over to try to find Maud. And we didn't see Maud in that house. We saw her on the street. He picked her up on the street. That house didn't belong to Maud. So the whole time we were worried about, is Oscar actually trying to get over on Maud Beaton? Is the investor trying to get over on Oscar? Maud was the scammer the whole time. And that investor or that banker was actually like trying to warn Oscar, like, take your money and go, bruh. And he didn't listen. So Oscar really met his match. He realized that, damn, I done lost nearly all of my family's money. And he runs to John Adams, who is like his only real and close friend and ally in the world. And he just completely breaks down because he's like, the thing is, I actually liked her, not, in the way that a man, a cishet man likes a cishet woman, but he really enjoyed her company and felt like this was his way out. Baby, you was her way out. Okay. She pulled some Atlanta shit on your ass. And he has no legal recourse. So Mrs. Fane's party ended up being like Love and Hip Hop Atlanta season 1, because between Mrs. Astor and Mrs. Russell having, again, the WASP equivalent of a knockdown, drag out fight, Oscar ran up there just absolutely disheveled and in disbelief that, like, did nobody really know Maud? That lady got over on us. So meanwhile, at the reception, right? Larry had me nervous as hell when he was giving Mrs. Roebling her flowers for her contribution to the Brooklyn Bridge. I kept looking at her face like, is she happy he doing this or not? Is she happy he doing this or not? And at the end, she was appreciative, but she was like, them folks ain't really gonna give me credit. They gonna say I was a dutiful wife and everybody gonna move on with their life. And that's gonna be it. But fortunately, we know the truth now in 2023. Good for Mrs. Roebling. Thank you. That bridge does a lot for everybody. Now, over in Brooklyn, with the Black people, this was such an interesting example of the relationship between the Black community and the Irish immigrant community. The Black schools need to stay open. They need more pupils, meaning that they probably need to integrate the schools. Now, I love how that Black man stood up and was like, we don't want integration. Because I think there were a lot of people who really didn't want integration. I think that for a lot of people, separate but equal was cool with them. As long as y'all ain't trying to take from us, we don't really need y'all to be over here. And that's something that I also find fascinating, that people always think that Black people and marginalized groups are always trying to like infiltrate their communities. We just want our own communities to be straight. Like, why would we want to cut? Look at the difference between the two parties. The Black People's Celebration looked way more lively and festive than the stuffy ass reception with the president. You know what I mean? Like, we be doing our own thing. We just want to be able to do our own thing in peace and not be disenfranchised. But anyway, so in order for the Board of Education to take them seriously, it looks like they need white people to be on board. And Peggy's dad was like, the only reason that my pharmacy was able to thrive is because a white pharmacist encouraged other white people to shop with me, to work with me. And unfortunately, even now, we still, in order to get to a certain place, need a cosign from a white person. Like, that's still true. And I'm really happy that Peggy could reach out to Marianne as an actual ally. So Marianne makes a speech to pull in more white teachers, because in order for white people to be willing to send their white kids to a Black school, there needs to be white people already there so that they're like, is this legit or not? So this Irish teacher is like, I've been trying to get a job, blah, blah, blah. I can bring some other people and maybe, this can help. And so for the Board of Education to take these Brooklyn schools seriously, they have these Irish people that are teaching and attending. Well, here's what. During that time, Irish people were not treated much better than Black Americans. They were kind of neck and neck in terms of disenfranchisement. And again, that's why whiteness is such an interesting concept, because it's something that a certain kind of person can aspire to that other people can't. It's proximity. So, to Mr. Fortune's point, like, unfortunately, it's a shame it's only Irish people and it's not like Anglo-Saxon white American, but we'll see how things turn out. They do look to be like really excited about the prospect of being able to keep their schools open. Now, what did happen was Mr. Fortune met Peggy's parents. One thing about a Black mama, she always knows when something is up. So Peggy's mama was like, I know that man into you, and I know y'all went down there to Alabama together, and I raised you better than that. You better go talk to this boy over here because he cute and he ain't got no wife, and you don't work with him. You go over here because I raised you better than that. Meanwhile, Peggy is doing everything that she can to keep like professional distance between them. We'll see if they give in to temptation. I really hope they don't, because I feel like Peggy's mama, we raised Peggy better than that. So I also really love seeing Peggy with the other free Black people, and they were just dressed up and they were having a good time and drinking champagne on the rooftop. I'm happy that we aren't just seeing Black people struggling. Yeah, they have less than like the Russells and the Astors, but they have a full and beautiful and rich life. They're fighting for their freedom. They're also celebrating. They're also working and having kids. And I'm happy to see this version of Black life. Although we know it's fictionalized, I'm happy to see it. I cannot handle seeing a lot of like Black trauma, and I appreciate the creators for giving us that. Meanwhile, downstairs, Mrs. Bauer and all the people are just like distraught over Uncle Luke's passing, and she don't know to do nothing else but cook. And that is so true. Like in my family, when people die, it's put some shit on a grill, let's put some shit in the oven, everybody gonna bring food, everybody gonna eat. It's a way to commune. Love that. So Mr. Bannister has a friend. I'm going to see if I can pronounce this. I've been practicing. Mr. Bannister has a friend who is the secretary of the Uhrmacher von der Stadt of New York, which is the watchmaking association of the city of New York. So he comes over and he looks at Jack's invention and he's like, this legit. I'm going to see if I can get you a membership. And he does. So this means that Jack can reapply for his patent. So we love to see community come together, and we love to see things work out for somebody who really wants more for himself. Flora comes to visit Watson and she says, listen, I never wanted you to go anywhere. My husband thought that he was doing the right thing and that you would be gone before I knew about any of this. I want you to have an apartment here and you'll just be, you know, a retired banker, which is the truth, and you'll be a part of our life and a part of our family. And Watson is overjoyed. I don't trust it. This is too, the bow is being tied on this a little too neatly. I don't trust it. I do hope it works out. Maybe I'm being cynical, but whenever you get the warm and fuzzy, some bullshit is afoot. So we'll see. I was scared as hell for Oscar to tell Agnes that he done lost all their money. I was nervous as hell. I was like, oh, I don't know how this is gonna work out. And she looked gut punched, as she should. Luke done just died in the house. Now we broke. You done lost out. When she said, well, go get the money back, what you mean? The naivete. One of my commenters said that they think that Marianne's marriage to Dashiell or Larry Russell is going to be what saves the Van Rhijn family fortune. I could absolutely see that, but I'm really hoping that Marianne, you know, taking that walk with Larry Russell will maybe make her realize that, girl, you like him. You don't like Dashiell like that. So we'll see what happens. This episode really heated things up. We got a lot of character development. Oscar got his comeuppance. I am very pulled in as we're nearing the end of the season. This episode was excellent. Très magnifique. So I will see you guys for episode 8. Come back and see me. Be sure to like and comment and subscribe and share. And if you like what you saw here and want to support the platform, join my Patreon. The link is in the episode description. And I'll see you guys soon.